Hey, welcome to episode 1 of the Surviving Guitar podcast. I'm Corey Congilio. With me is my co-host Steve B. And Steve, how are you today, man?
Man, I'm feeling good. Excited about what we're going to be talking about today. Some exciting stuff in the guitar world over the last couple weeks.
We are dipping our toes into the podcast water. We thought, why not? You have a background in music retail, manufacturers. You work with a lot of people in the creator, economy world as well. And if you don't know me, I'm Corey Congilio, and I'm a lifelong guitar player, musician, and I do a bunch of things with a camera and a guitar nowadays, like create lessons, have a YouTube channel. And Steve and I work closely together on my website, which is called Working Class Guitar, which is also going to be our sponsor as always for all of these videos. And that's where all of my guitar courses live. You can purchase them. You can sign up to be a member. It's a lot of fun. We have a good time over there. And you can check the links below for a free 14-day trial to check out all of the content. And you can also become a working class VIP. So what we're going to do with this podcast is we're going to talk about the musical instrument industry. They often call it MI for short. And I'm going to lean on Steve for his expertise with a lot of this stuff. And we'll try to keep it, close to like one or two topics maybe. But and then he'll get my perspective as someone that, uses a lot of this stuff on a daily basis to play guitar for a living. So Steve, what's piqued your interest this week here in the guitar community, guitar world, if you will?
Yeah, great. Well, first I got to say, you've really undercut yourself, I think, in describing your expertise. Because I'll say it. You won't say it, but pro touring guitar player, been around the world, played with some really big names. I mean,
it's been fun.
Corey's the man when it comes to this stuff.
But at the end of the day, it's what's right in front of me, and that's
true.
you and
it's
this
true.
camera, and that's the way I look at it.
But I'm just saying, the experience is there.
I
The experience to have these conversations.
Trying to stay humble
immense.
here.
That's right.
Yeah.
But listen, the thing you and I have been talking about this for a couple weeks, but really this idea of like, what's Fender doing? How big is Fender? How big is the Fender, dare we say, oligopoly maybe in all of this stuff, monopoly, I don't know. So, the news that hit this week was that the investors that own FMIC, which for those of you that don't know, FMIC is Fender Musical Instrument Corporation, and say they are overseeing brands like Fender, Gretsch, EVH, Jackson, Charvel. There's a lot underneath that umbrella of FMIC. Bigsby, I think they just bought Bigsby also.
Yeah.
And the news right now, the hot news out is that same investor group just purchased Reverb from Etsy. And you kind of start looking at that, like, why would they do that? And I want to talk a little bit about that and get your thoughts on that. But I also want to dig a little bit deeper because there's been a couple acquisitions that have happened that aren't as publicly, the public isn't as aware of them. And you start putting those pieces together, and like I just feel like Fender's getting to this place where it's like they want a piece of every guitar sale on the internet. I feel like that's kind of what they're trying to piece together in all of this.
And I think this goes way back to when Fender started acquiring all the other brands too, whether it be Guild, Jackson Charvel, all that kind of stuff. I could see that, the writing on the wall early on. But yeah, to your point, Fender has their toe in just about every pool or maybe is striving to do that. I don't know, but it sure would look that way considering what just went down with the purchase of Reverb, or at least Fender didn't purchase them. We need to make that clear. The investor group purchased them, but the money trickles the same way, I'd imagine. They still need to get paid on their investment. And getting a piece of the used guitar market sure would seem like a pretty big trickle.
It's true. And I think that's the easy button as far as why do you do this? You do this to get a piece of the used market because we know Sweetwater has a store on Reverb.
Right.
Fender themselves have a store on Reverb. Guitar Center has a store on Reverb. Chicago Music Exchange has a store on Reverb. Every mom and pop guitar shop out there has a store on Reverb. So now all of a sudden Fender, and once again, this is like the really easy thing to see, is that now Fender's getting a piece of everybody's revenue,
Right.
regardless of who you are. You know, they're
Right.
making the percentage that seems to be quite a bit, but that becomes an interesting part of the equation where Fender just goes, now we just get a piece of everybody.
Yeah, and it's also coming at an interesting time to where, you and I have talked about what the used guitar market is going to do. Is there going to be a boom? Is there already a boom because of what will potentially be happening with imported guitars or parts to make guitars in Corona, California, or Nazareth, Pennsylvania, or you know what I mean? Like, all of the incoming tariff discussion is going to be, the used guitar market is going to be influenced by that. And I sold 4 guitars last month, and I didn't even need to sell them to buy a new one. So I'm deep in the used guitar game too, and it comes and goes for me. But yeah, but now somebody down the line with the company that owns Fender will be getting a piece, albeit small, of my used guitar sale on Reverb.
Well, right. And when you think about the used guitar market, like we know Guitar Center is starting to lean into that. That's one of their big competitive advantages, over like a Sweetwater, is they have
Right.
physical stores that can bring it. I mean, for a lot of it's the only reason we walk into a Guitar Center. We're either desperate for strings and they happen to be open until 9 o'clock,
Right.
or you're looking at this used guitar wall. But I think that's the piece of this whole buyout that's actually a little more interesting to me, which is it gives Fender this road, this avenue to sell their gear on a platform a little less obviously than just like selling it on their website. And this
Right.
is where the conversation you and I have been having about this company called MIRC comes in.
Yeah, you want to talk about less obvious. There's probably people that don't have any idea what MIRC is. But before we go into that, it's like the biggest double dip that can happen, because I'm Fender, I sell a guitar to Guitar Center. They obviously, fulfill the invoice, and then I also will make money on the customer that brings that guitar back to Guitar Center to resell on trade, or the person does it individually, through Reverb. So they're always, kind of repopulating the pot, the honey pot, with either their initial sale to a dealer or to the used market, the person on the used market reselling, be it the store or the individual. And I'm probably overlooking other ways they're raking it into or about to.
Right. Totally. Well, and you make an interesting point there, because the biggest biggest competitor in the guitar market to a new store is the used market.
Right.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
because a Stratocaster that's 3 years old is just as good as
Yeah.
it was 3 years ago. It's not like technology or a car from 20 years ago is not a competitive threat to a car of today.
Totally. And when I used to do clinics for Martin Guitar, and a lot of times they would say that the biggest competition for a new Martin is an old Martin. And it doesn't matter if it's a year old or 20 years old. Everybody knows that, guitars that are played, because I think playing them is an important thing, they get better. Like they just get better. And that's why the vintage market is coveted and all that kind of thing. But that would be a real argument for a new Martin, is that it doesn't sound old. And it's a little off the beaten path, but yeah, the used market is certainly competition for new stuff.
Well, and I think a lot of the brands are trying to create new instruments that feel and sound old, right?
Of
I mean, that's
course.
why the Relic
Of
thing,
course.
that's why the thermo age tops and all the stuff that are happening to try to open up that wood without having to actually play it and get that diaphragm moving
Yeah.
are becoming upsells almost,
Oh, it really is. I mean, a lot of, whether it's nitro lacquer or torrefied tops or, hide glue or protein glue, as they call it now, that's all upgrade stuff to try to say, hey, you can get all the qualities of this great old guitar that's used in a new one. And in some ways, they do a really, really good job of it. But again, used guitars will always be new guitars competition.
Totally. And at some point, the weird cycle not the weird, but the cycle that happens is Fender has to manufacture guitars to sell new to a retailer or new on their own website, because that's part of this whole equation is how much Fender is selling straight to the consumer now, and taking that business away from the retailer. But I think that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But Fender has to make a certain amount of guitars to hit a certain number to keep people employed and keep factories open and keep their taxes paid and all that stuff. And they have to figure out a way to get those guitars sold and what you have to remember, and what a lot of people I think aren't really factoring into, is they have a price they sell that guitar to a dealer for, right? They have a wholesale price. So you and I both have experience with this, but let's just make some numbers up here.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't want to. So say you walk into a guitar store and there's a brand new Stratocaster hanging on the wall and it's $1,000. The dealer probably paid somewhere between $650 and $700 to Fender for that guitar.
Right.
So where this conversation gets even more interesting is Fender is basing their business and their growth and their sustainability off of that wholesale price, not off of the retail price.
Right.
So when Fender sells a Stratocaster to a consumer from their website, that same $1,000 Stratocaster, if they sell it directly to you from their website, they're actually making $300 to $350 more than they would make if they sold it directly to the retailer.
Oh, of course.
So opening up these avenues, and we're gonna start exploring this a little bit here.
Oh, yeah.
But what gets interesting about some of these avenues we're going to bring up, just for thought, a lot of this stuff is just conjecture that we've enjoyed going down a road on. But theoretically, if Fender sold every guitar they had through some platform like Reverb, and they were able to do it at their wholesale price, the end consumer feels like they're getting a deal. But Fender does actually, like, their numbers are exactly the same. Their growth path is exactly the same.
Right.
And so that's where it gets interesting, because as Fender's acquired more and more companies, the Fender Investment Group has acquired more and more companies to give them a channel to sell guitars. I think that becomes a little more of a temptation. You have to figure out ways inside of Fender to do that. And I think this is where the MIRC conversation kind of gets interesting.
Yeah, and MIRC is a really interesting one, and I know you have, history with them because you had a music store, right? And
right, exactly.
And you bought guitars from MIRC.
A lot of them.
Yeah,
a lot of guitars from MIRC,
and
so
they were acquired by Fender,
right? And I believe there was an acquisition from the time I worked with them to the time FMIC or the investment group acquired them. I believe there was an acquisition between there also. I could be wrong on that, but I believe there was. But let me give the 10-second. So MIRC, for those of you that don't know,
Musical
they're actually
Instrument Reclamation Corporation. Easy for me to say.
Totally. So historically, what MIRC has been, is a place where brands, and the brands I bought the most guitars of back in the day was Epiphone.
Oh yeah, they were like the poster child for MIRC.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that, brands like Epiphone, Gibson, all the big brands, Fender, they have what are called buy-ins for dealers.
Of course.
So, you come in, you go, hey, I want to buy Epiphone. It's from the last numbers I've seen, and these are decades old. So I know it's more now.
Oh yeah.
But when I had a little shop, if I wanted Epiphone or from Gibson in the store, it would have been a $50,000 to $100,000 initial buy-in.
And I remember it was, 20 years ago, it was $100,000 for Gibson, and it had to be in stock items only. Like you couldn't schedule out like 6 black SG standards.
Totally.
You had to do what was in the warehouse. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, and then the buy-ins then for many companies step up each year.
Oh yeah.
So I had a friend that had a really big Gibson store, and was telling me that I was on the phone with him. I remember I was driving down. I was in Anaheim, enjoying the sunny weather in Anaheim. I'm on the phone with him, and he said, I just got my buy-in from Gibson for this year, and it was $1.2 million. Ooh. And he said, I probably have enough guitars in stock that I could stay open for 3 to 4 years without bringing another guitar in, and now they're making me buy another 1.2 million.
Yeah, and that's why you saw people like, letting their Gibson's dealerships go, over the years, because they were just asking so much of the brick and mortars primarily, which is, a whole other conversation, because if you're allocating 1.2 million to Gibson, what are you doing for every other brand? You're not a Gibson store. You have to have other brands, man. And that's one of the many reasons a company, I think, like Gibson would get sort of maligned by their dealers.
Totally. Well, and I think too that back when they were doing more of that, now I've heard it's gotten better, but I will say I think there was that time, and maybe we kind of like broadly call it the late 90s, early 2000s.
Right.
But I think a lot of dealers picked up PRS because of that. They needed an equivalent guitar
Absolutely.
that wasn't as difficult to carry.
Yeah, I mean, and that's when you start to say, okay, am I going to carry ESP? Am I going to carry Heritage? Anything that has a single cut, two humbuckers, or that resembles a Gibson style. And in PRS's case, they made a two humbucker guitar with some with single cuts, most don't. But it filled that niche, or filled that void, I should say, in the line of the dealer for sure.
Totally. And you look at brands. I mean, I have a Music Man hanging on my wall.
Yeah,
You go pick up Music Man and it was 8 to 12 pieces or something. I mean, it was like comparative to Gibson or Epiphone, it was a drop in the bucket as far as what it took to become a dealer.
Yeah, I mean, when Fender buying Guild, and they had Bluesbirds with two humbuckers and a single cut. It's like any way that they could say, hey, you can shop with us still. You don't need to go to that other brand. But with MIRC, it was always pitched as like a refurb kind of a thing, or a factory blem, factory second sort of thing. What was your experience with like the quality of those guitars back in the day? And I haven't played anything that came from MIRC that I know of lately, because you might not know. So I want to share you to share your experience with, like, were they just as good as an off the line Epiphone? But also, I think the thing that you kind of gamble with when you're using an MIRC guitar, and I don't know how this works specifically, I can't speak on it, but the argument for buying from the manufacturer directly is warranty, support, all that kind of stuff. How much does all that play into someone having a small shop and purchasing from MIRC?
Yeah, it's a great question. So back to the high-level overview, to your point, MIRC was a warehouse, essentially, where brands, Epiphone was a huge one, but ESP was big there too. Schecter, actually.
Yep.
I mean, I should take back the ESP. Schecter was like really probably Epiphone was my biggest. Schecter was probably my second biggest as far as guitars that I brought in from them.
Okay.
So these brands, they bring in tens of thousands of guitars, overseas in a container. And they have to make a decision when those guitars come in. If they're not perfect, they have to determine if it's worth their time for a $400 guitar, $400 retail guitar,
Right.
which they're only going to make $225 on. If it's worth the time to have their employees spend the time and effort to actually fix the guitar. And most of the time, the answer is no. So what those companies would do is they would package all of those up and send them to a company like MIRC. So then MIRC would bring in all of those guitars for obviously much less than wholesale. And I don't know what the exact numbers were, but they had to have enough margin in that guitar to be able to spend time fixing it, marketing it, selling it, and making money on it.
Right. Man hours, all that stuff. Yeah,
totally. And so they would bring those in, and there would also be discontinued instruments, which were actually the best value, to your point, Corey, is like, what is the best? There was a year Guild discontinued these like small-bodied American-made acoustics that we were getting for like a fraction of what they were selling for. And it was amazing because they were brand new, no issues. They were just discontinued, and they had a warehouse full of them. So that becomes a really big value. But so MIRC brings these in, refurbishes them, places a stamp on the headstock. Now, this is important. This is an important note for where this conversation is going.
Yeah.
So they always would place a stamp on the headstock that either said second or used.
Right.
And there was a differentiation between those. I believe the second was, hey, it came in from the factory as like a discontinued piece, and used meant it had some sort of blemish or something like that.
Right.
They would get them all fixed up, and then they would sell them to mom and pop retailers, pawn shops, smaller shops that wanted Epiphone hanging on the wall or wanted Guild hanging on the wall, but couldn't do the buy-in, and would sell it to us. We were not back then. Now this changed at the end of my tenure, but we did not have to adhere to the MAP pricing, which is the pricing you see out there on the internet.
Sure. So
or the retail pricing.
So let me interrupt. You could price one of those discontinued, sought after Guild small bodies really favorably and still make a nice margin on
Exactly.
it. Yeah, and then you're sort of like out of the support conversation too, because it's discontinued. So it's like, they don't support that guitar anymore, But
Right.
but you as a small builder says, if you need to get the nut, file down or set up, bring it in and our repairman will work on it. So you as the small brick and mortar place still have a way to recoup something off of that instrument.
Well, totally, because if somebody walks in the door and wants the Epiphone Les Paul sitting there. Now, remember, Epiphone Les Pauls were much less expensive back then. Like that Les Paul
Oh, my
standard
gosh.
brand new, I think, was
It's like
like
$7.99 or something.
well, it was now. Back then, it was like $4.99.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So I mean, I was getting, you're
you mean
getting these
Epiphone.
guitars
Right,
for
right.
like the Epiphone stuff, you know. So somebody comes in, they're going to save $100-$150. They love the guitar, but they want it set up with nines. Well, now it's like, well, I'll either include that with the price, or hey, we'll cut the bench fee in half, or
Yeah.
And now they're walking out with a guitar they really love. I was selling at my peak. There was a year that I was probably selling between 100 and 125 MIRC guitars a month.
A month. Wow.
And of all of that, I only had one that really had like some sort of weird warranty issue. And back then, MIRC actually came to bat for me with the customer.
Wow.
And so it was pretty cool. But that's what MIRC filled this gap in the market, or fills this gap in the market of brands knowing what to do with guitars then when they don't want to spend the labor to fix them all. And it fills the market with small shops to get a more variety of a guitar. Like, okay, I can get, it's not just these, I hate to use the word generic, but in-house brands or things from whoever their distributor is. They can actually get some name brand stuff in the door without having to fork out $50,000, $100,000 to do that.
No, it's actually kind of genius, and that takes us back to FMIC buying MIRC. All these acronyms flying around and losing track here, but in any case, it's just yet another thing that we're trying to talk about on this podcast of Fender's reach being almost an umbrella at this point over now the online used market, the refurb market, and then of course new. I mean, and then they've been selling direct for years now, right? And
oh yeah, totally.
yeah, and we could go down rabbit holes of I've heard from dealers where they say, well, I don't have it in stock, but it says it's in stock on the Fender website, and that's a whole other.
It's two different warehouses,
Well, yeah. There you go.
Because and Corey, you actually make an interesting point, because this is where MIRC. So through this road, MIRC started a brand called Nashville Guitar Works.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
So Nashville,
I've been to one of the MIRC's moved since they've gotten bigger, and I was at one of their factories one time, and there was just like benches everywhere and like repairmen working on guitars, and there's just, I mean, as many guitar boxes as you've ever seen. It was insane. There was so much stuff.
Well, they used to ship, and my favorite MIRC story isn't actually necessarily about them, but they used to ship you these boxes that were 6 to 8 guitars in one box.
Wow.
Because they're trying to save on shipping, and they don't. So they just have the triangle boxes, the cardboard boxes. So they're just stuffing them in this huge box. Well, I had a Toyota Tacoma at the time. I'm driving the boxes home. I have them stacked. I had ordered so many guitars. I have them stacked in the back of the truck. It's raining cats. I mean, it is like raining like crazy. And what I used to do is have them shipped to the UPS store where I had a box. And I'm driving down the road. I look back. These boxes are flying out of the back of the truck. Yes.
But you got so many guitars, you don't care.
But it didn't. Yeah, I just went home.
Whatever.
I just went home.
Yeah.
But Nashville Guitar Works becomes important because that is now a new guitar they can sell to all these dealers at a price point that they don't have to go after Squire or any of the
Right.
like lower price, I shouldn't say lower end, but lower price stuff. So you can get a Nashville Guitar Works guitar, bring it into the store, and sell it full retail. I mean, back then, full retail, I think, was like $249, and it's basic S style stuff, T style stuff, all of that. So this is where your and my conversation really got hot, because I was looking for a penguin, a Gretsch penguin.
Oh, yeah.
And I noticed on Reverb, there's Nashville Guitar Works has a Reverb store.
Well, I just looked up their site too. I'm doing a little recon while you're informing the good people.
So I go to the Nashville Guitar Works Reverb store. I didn't go to the store. I found this Gretsch penguin I was looking for. It was a very specific one. That was in that, you know, and I went to the Nashville Guitar Works Reverb store.
Okay.
And noticed that they had a significant amount of Fender
Right.
FMIC brands, I guess I
Right.
should say. Fender, Gretsch, all of that. And I want to make sure I'm double checking myself just real quick, but I thought there's a weird connection here because of my history with MIRC. I scoured those pictures looking for a used or a second stamp or something that would indicate that this guitar was not brand new from the factory.
Mm-hmm.
Because historically, that's all they've done, right? Is like the second and the used stuff. So I'm saying Nashville Guitar Works. The Reverb store is under Franklin Guitar Works. There's actually another entity involved in this. So if you go to Franklin Guitar Works, the plot thickens, right? So Nashville Guitar Works, their Reverb store sells the Nashville Guitar Works guitars. Franklin Guitar Works, located conveniently in Franklin, Tennessee.
Yep.
If you go there,
There's all
Fender,
the Fender brands.
Charvel, Gretsch, Jackson, all of them discounted.
Yep.
And I couldn't find any marks on this Gretsch, and they had it priced significantly under retail as used, excellent condition. And I thought, I'm going to offer them a price that's so ridiculous that if I hate this guitar, I'm going to make some money on it. You know?
Right.
Kind of thing. I offered them the price thinking it was so ridiculously low. And they accepted it. And I get the guitar.
Why not?
And I get the guitar. All the plastic is still on it. Everything's covered. This guitar has never been touched. And that's the interesting piece with this whole, like, how big, what's the monopoly of Fender? Is it's like,
right.
Or FMIC, because they are now creating an outlet that it does not matter. However they want to sell this guitar, they're going to sell it.
They will sell it. Yeah. And it's like, you know, when a hotel wants to sell the rooms out, you know, on the last, 11th hour of the day, they're going to sell it to you dirt cheap because they would rather have the room filled than not. And they would rather have the guitar sold and the transaction made than not. So I totally get it.
Right. And that's where where you and I really started having this conversation of how big is Fender, the true impact to the mom and pop shop. Mm-hmm. And because I want bringing this all the way around, it's so easy to go online and buy a guitar. And there's some great outlets. I mean, we have relationships with a lot of people that sell guitars online.
Yeah. I've been working in music retail since I was 18.
Right.
And it's such a small world, and I know people from all over the place, and just so many great friends that are music retailers.
Right. And my first MI, job I was 21, when I got my job at Ernie Ball Music Man. So
yeah,
there's this whole thing going on, but the monopoly or oligopoly, maybe is a better word here, of Fender is that they're buying these avenues.
Right.
And the thing that's interesting to me is like, and once again, this is educated speculation. So I don't want to be accused of saying this is exactly what's happening.
That's what you do on a podcast.
Totally. This is the educated speculation guitar podcast.
Guitar pontification.
Totally. But Fender is basically saying we can sell them new to the dealer. We can sell them new through our own website.
Yep.
Now Fender on Fender's Reverb page has a Fender pre-owned, certified pre-owned.
Of course.
Which you look at how many, like, once again, pontification, you look at how many certified pre-owns there are, they're not getting that many guitars back from customers. I mean, these are overstocks. I mean, this is my take. I think these are overstocks. These are just sitting in a warehouse somewhere, and we're calling them certified pre-owned so we can discount them and not, not upset people.
Yeah, or, so would the certified pre-owned be the MIRC models?
No, that's it. Certified pre-owned is a whole different thing.
Okay, I didn't know that.
That's under Fender. If you search Reverb certified, Fender certified pre-owned, that's a whole nother Reverb store.
Wow.
With full warranty and all of that stuff.
So I'm thinking that's like maybe, like you said, overstock or even a dealer return / mishap in an order, and man, it's just like you're saying, any way to fill the hotel room they can do. And then you didn't even, so that's like 1, 2, 3. You named 3. Fourth would probably be your MIRC then at that point, right?
Would be like the Franklin Guitar Works. So like, here's full retail for the guitar. Here's, or like full retail selling direct to consumer from the Fender website. Mm-hmm. Then, they're actually making more money if even though the guitar is cheaper for the end user, they're making more money if they buy it certified pre-owned from Fender. Mm-hmm. On the Reverb store, because Fender's bringing in more money of that.
Of course.
And now they're making the percentage.
Right.
Or not charging themselves a percentage or whatever.
Right.
Then you have full dealer. And then you have the guitars that have sat around too long and they definitely have to get rid of them. Pontification.
Yep.
Franklin Guitar Works. Let's send them to that. And now that it's under Franklin Guitar Works umbrella, we don't even have to think about MAP policies or pricing policies. We can take whatever offer you want to send us. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah, because they created these, like, sort of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, like these obscure internet stores that are, this random dealer that lives on the internet where there's no storefront. You know what I mean? There's no employees other than people fulfilling orders, and who knows where those orders are getting fulfilled from anyway. Like, it's just a storefront visually, essentially, to siphon these products through in this manner.
100%.
Wow.
And this is just what you can like find out from Googling around and stuff. I mean, who knows what else? I mean,
oh my gosh. Yeah. There's always more. It's like the music industry that, that I'm also in with, as far as like music business. There's always stuff behind the curtain that you do not know about. And I've been privy to probably a third to half of what really happens in the music industry. And we didn't even talk about nepotism, or we didn't even talk about, other kind of backhanded deals, But yeah, man, I think we've actually laid out how many pots Fender's hands really are in, and again, like, not to mention every time a sale or a transaction happens on Reverb, that it doesn't matter what the brand is. Now it's like throwing out the biggest net you could to catch the tiniest fish, because a lot of tiny fish still add up. It's kind of a brilliant acquisition in a lot of ways. We might not like it from the monopolization aspect, but it is kind of what it is now. But one thing I wanted to mention too is, I don't know how this factors in, but I would let me share this here. MIRC is revitalizing the Mighty Mite brand. Do you remember Mighty Mite?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Guitar parts. So I don't know very much about the inventory or the product line. It's obviously like not to the level of a Warmouth, but I know that they're trying to push the accessory market, which, here we are with the accessory market world. Is there anything that has a bigger margin in music retail than an accessory? Like,
for sure.
I mean, how much does it really cost to make a pickup? Even if you're importing it, I mean, $2. Like, what's that? I always think of the Arrested Development when she says, "How much could a banana cost? $10?" No, it's like no, it's a lot cheaper than that. This, like, a pickup probably costs, I don't know, less than $20 to make.
Oh, if
$10
that.
maybe.
I mean, if you're importing it, yeah. I mean, delivered with packaging, $8-10.
Yeah, and in all fairness, I have not researched where Mighty Might is getting their stuff from or whatever. But they do have a section here that says reclaimed parts. You know, something that's guaranteed to add character to your guitar or bass build. Reclaimed parts are our curated, authentic guitar parts we've collected over the course of decades. Now, have you collected them from all those guitars that came 6 or 12 to a box? Maybe, you know, I mean, there's a Valley. I'm looking at here. I'll share it right now. Where is it? There's a Valley Arts, you know, Strat or Tele neck plate, you know, an Epiphone Bats in Flight acoustic pickguard. It's kind of cool because it reminds me of like the hot rod world for cars where like, oh, I need the bumper for this 59 blah, 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 you know, like, there it is, you know, like, so this is actually kind of cool that you can find some of these obscure parts if you're interested in going digging for that kind of thing. Like, what say you on that?
No, so Mighty Might, when I had a shop, Mighty Might was traditionally I need a part and I need it cheap.
Right.
I mean, I'm with you here scrolling the site because I didn't even know this was happening.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, I need a Gretsch Fidelitron pickup that's gold, and I can get it here reclaimed. I mean, how cool is that? Now, I'll tell you what I'm a little surprised at is the price of the Mighty Might branded pickups and stuff on here. Because I'm looking at a Mighty Might pickup brand new for $125. I mean, that was
right.
If you needed a pickup for $20, $30, that was like the Mighty Might thing back in the day, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, stuff was generally dirt cheap. Now, hopefully, like, you know, this stuff is of high quality. I mean, it's Fender branded, it's Gretsch branded, Seymour Duncan. So, you know, I mean, here's a P90.
Like that one down there on the row below, that zebra one on the left. See where it says Mighty Might? So that's a brand new Mighty Might brand.
Yeah, $125. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, if it's branded after, like, hey, we you know, oh, here we go. Handcrafted by the Seymour Duncan Custom Shop in California.
Oh, awesome.
Look at that. So interesting stuff. I'll be really curious to see how they market that, you know, and because I think one of the great things about the era that we're in is guys like us remember Mighty Might, and people older than us will remember Mighty Might, or companies like that might have a resurgence after they're purchased or whatever. But the younger player doesn't know. They have no history of a brand like that. So it's a nice potential doorway for them to open for new players to come in for accessories if they brand it and if they market it you know, what I would think would be an attractive way. You know,
well, and if you think about it, they're doing exactly what we said earlier was the main reason we walk into a Guitar Center.
Mm-hmm.
Is the used stuff, the reclaimed stuff. I mean, this is the stuff that's really interesting. I mean, I would have not, if you didn't bring this up today, I would have probably never again in my life thought, oh, I need to go to the Mighty Might website. But now it's like there's a real value. I mean, Fender 70th anniversary Esquire bridge assembly. Like, it's going to come from a company I know. I know there's not going to be any shenanigans. Yep. It'll get shipped quickly. I mean, there's a lot of value here.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, again, I can't help but think of the times that we're living in, where I just watched a video on TikTok of a farmer who, instead of buying a new, you know, like one of those mini forklifts, he was just going to repair his old one of 15 years. He was ready for a new one, but he's like, I can't afford the new one. I'm going to buy the parts. Where do you go for the parts? Some crazy, obscure, you know, forklift supply website, just like you would do on a guitar. And, you know, Steve, you and I talked to our VIP subscribers at Working Class Guitar, and everybody's modding their guitar. Everybody's monkeying with tuners and pickups and knobs and switches and pots, you know. So I think Mighty Might has a real shot to do it right, you know, in that sense. Specifically this time, in this time that we're in, not everybody's going to be interested into getting like the high-end wiring harness. They just need something that might be a little bit better than that was in the imported guitar they got, you know.
Well, and we talk a lot about, like, there's different levels of players, right? I mean, there's the guy, you know, that plays on Saturdays at the local bars that doesn't want the super expensive stuff. You know, there's the nervousness of having the guitar just hanging out on stage while he's out back taking 10.
Oh,
you
man.
know, it's like you don't want the super expensive stuff.
Yeah, and I had to rethink that too. I mean, I've been pretty, excuse me, pretty landlocked for the past 4 or 5 years since I haven't been touring as much. But I did a couple bus gigs a few weeks ago. Took out my Collings I-35, my 64 SG Junior, and I was terrified. I was like, oh man, you know, they're in a really nice guitar vault that I had, but in the back of a trailer behind a giant tour bus. Like, you know, if it would have been a parts guitar, I probably would have cared a lot less. But, you know, who knows? Maybe someday I'll get back into, if I'm back on the road, I'll get back into building some beater guitars to.
That's right. Well, now you know more. You know, I'm sure we know a couple people that would be happy to build you a beater guitar.
Yeah, it's been nice to meet some really great people that build stuff and use all this stuff we're talking about. But one last thing I will say about MIRC is we don't want to paint them as being like somebody who's flying under the radar. There's plenty of information out there on them, but I have it on good authority that their direction is to say they want to distribute guitars that are the equivalent of you driving a car off the lot, 24 hours you bring it back because you made the wrong choice. That's the pitch I've gotten from them, which, hey, everybody's got a company line, and that's not a bad one. And from what I know about their history, you would know more than I would. Like you said, they backed you up on that one instance you had. Everything that's going out of there is quality. And as guitar players, I think the people that get nervous about guitars are ones that are maybe afraid to turn a wrench or don't live near a qualified luthier or something, or maybe a parent that has no idea about guitars. But let's say 7 out of 10 guitar players know that a guitar either works or it doesn't. Like, everything's pretty fixable on a guitar. So if you get a smoking...
Especially electric.
Especially electric. Acoustic's a little bit more of a bear, and sometimes it can cost more to fix the guitar than the guitar's worth. But an electric guitar, you kind of can't mess it up. Like, you can fix just about anything. You would fix a nut, fret job, electronics, outside, even a broken headstock. Like, all that stuff is totally fixable.
And when you get into bolt-on electric guitars, it's exponentially more. It's
easier.
Which is why it does get interesting when you look at this online market. I think so many people are so much more comfortable just buying 100 electric guitars online because they know they can get them how they want them, more or less.
Yeah, and kudos to the brands. Let's take Gibson, Fender, PRS. There's going to be people that would argue with us in the comments on this, but by and large, they're fairly consistent. Like, everybody has a story about a dud Epiphone or a dud PRS SE or a dud, imported Fender, Mexican Fender, whatever. It's going to happen. It's wood and metal. Stuff moves. But at the end of the day, again, it's all fixable. So you have a pretty solid chance of getting something. As long as if you played a Silver Sky SE in Guitar Center, and then you ordered one online, it's going to be darn near the same guitar, outside of, the setup a lot of times. Now, again, exceptions are always the case. Some are just dogs, some are exceptional. I'm not saying how they sound or how they feel or the weight or any of that. I'm saying they're pretty close.
And I think you're right. I mean, and as technology's gotten better and CNC's gotten better. It's like maybe for every 20 Fenders that come off the line, there's one dud, quote unquote dud. There's 18 that are fine, right in the baseline of what you expect it to be. And there's going to be one exceptional one where you pick it up and go, man, whoever did the final setup on this just did something special here,
and that's, or the opposite. And that would happen when I would do Martin events. I'd play loads and loads of D18s and D28s, and they were all really, really consistent outside of the neglect that might have happened in a shop or something, with humidity or whatever, affecting a guitar. Even those guitars can be brought back. But Martin would make you pay if you're a dealer and you had to send a guitar back for user error or dealer error.
Totally. And that's, and I think circling this all the way back around, because you were kind of alluding to this, is it's like none of this is necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
But I think the thing that that rubs me just a little bit is the clarity to the end consumer with where this guitar came from and who they're buying it from. And that's the piece where it's like, this is why it gets so important. There's a space for everything.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a local guitar shop that you really like and you want them to be there in 5 years,
Yeah, right.
you have to buy stuff from them. I mean, it's
true.
At the end of the day, that's just the reality. And you also have to understand that I don't even though I've talked to store owners that have told me this, it doesn't take much to put the pieces together to say, as a guitar store, the pressure they're feeling from the manufacturers, where now they used to just have to compete with the other guitar store or with Sweetwater or with Musician's Friend. Mm-hmm. But now they're actually having to compete with the brands themselves. That's a whole nother competitive market that's new. And it just, the heart to me of this conversation is that there's a lot of good stuff. We've all bought, you and I have bought stuff online. We've bought a lot of stuff from dealers. I try to go to my favorite dealers when I buy something. I try to go to them first to see if they have it. And because I want those stores to be around in 5 years. I want my son, who's starting to play, has his first concert actually coming up next. He's in 8th grade. So the first 8th grade concert that he's going to be in is next month. But I want him to be able to go to the stores that I like going to. And if we don't buy stuff from them, you just can't run a business if you're not selling stuff.
And we can, Steve, we said we were going to keep this short, but we just keep.
But here we go.
It just keeps snowballing from one thing to another. I have real nostalgia for guitar shop culture. I love hanging out in a guitar shop and talking shop with other people. There's 2 instances in Nashville here that I do it a lot, and not the places you might expect. One that I try to support a couple times a year is a pedal shop called Guitar Effects Pedals. And that used to be an online shop back in the day. And Ryan, who runs the shop, just does an awesome job of having all of the great stuff that you want to check out there. Eastside Music Supply too. I try to buy something from them every so often too, even if it's just a t-shirt. And I just like getting, you never know what you're going to talk about or who you're going to bump into. Like I had a Jeff Beck Strat that was on consignment at Guitar Effects Pedals. And they said, yeah, so the other day Eric Johnson was in here for like 2 hours trying stuff out. And he goes, the only guitar he played was your Jeff Beck Strat. I should have said that, like, make sure you put that in the consignment note. Eric Johnson played this Jeff Beck Strat. And I just think that's so cool. Like, I don't know many other industries where that happens and it has that community kind of a feel. And you and I talk about the longing for community as we're all, connected online. The real connection is getting lost often. The thing I can equate it to is when my father would take me to like hunting, and fishing shop, bait shops and stuff like that, where guys will just hang out all day and talk about where they hunted and where they were fishing and the stuff they were using, to the point where you'd go in at like 10:30 and before long they're ordering lunch, and then you get on the lunch order with them, and then you eat lunch and you're hanging out, and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna go practice my archery. And it's like, I remember those days and thinking like, we've been here for like 5 hours and nobody bought anything, but it was awesome.
Totally. And that,
so you want to keep that culture alive, and whether it's buying strings or whatever, it all helps. At least I think it's cool. I like it.
Yeah, and it's hard to recreate that, with what we have,
Yeah, the other places in Nashville is XTS or Exact Tone Solutions, where they build like custom pedal boards and rigs. They also sell their own pedals and stuff too, but you always will run into like some, great Nashville pro there, and you kind of just swap stuff with them, stories and whatnot, so yeah,
totally.
It's all about the culture.
And, for me, it's like my favorite shop in the country right now, is Music Villa up in Bozeman, Montana. And every time we go there, it's just like, you could literally, just like what you said, you could be there all day. And you could be talking about some great rock show you saw 1 second and a bluegrass thing the next.
Yep.
And,
that
some
store
piano
has
thing.
The vibe.
It's,
oh, yeah.
There's nothing. I remember I was there once. My whole family was vacationing up there in Bozeman, and I told my wife, like, I'll just be like half hour, and then you look at your watch, you're like 2 or 3 hours deep already. Right. It's like, how did that even happen? So that stuff is really, really important. And it's, that's in understanding all of this stuff. The ease and the convenience is great. But the reality of like what our dollars dictate what tomorrow's guitar shop landscape looks like.
100%. I just wanted to give a shout out to the great state of Montana. I actually got this mug when I was visiting Music Villa one time doing a clinic with Martin. But yeah, the overarching sentiment here, I think on this episode, and anything in these series of podcasts we'll do, is that we want to inform the uninformed, and we want to help people make good decisions. So pulling the curtain back on a discussion about what Fender's doing in the marketplace is helpful. I don't think it's discouraging. I just think it helps the consumer make the decision that's the most educated for them and that they feel most comfortable with.
Right. And this isn't unusual either. I mean, cars have been doing this. The car industry has been doing this for years. Like there's almost any industry you look at, especially that it gets to a certain size. This brand, I mean, the makeup industry, I was talking to my wife about this, which is a weird left turn we're about to take. But, when you look at Estee Lauder or something like that, the number of brands that they own is insane. I mean, it's like every brand that, that a lady uses. I mean, they will know one of those brands on the Estee Lauder, list.
Well, think about, the company Harman. And Harman owned Lexicon, Digitech, Harman Kardon, maybe. Oh geez, I'm blanking on ProSense, JBL, whatever. So that company was bought several years ago by Samsung, and from what I understand, their market was they wanted to buy extra technology so that they could get into the more automotive field and have higher end JBL stuff in cars and work with guns. So there's always other avenues and end games that larger companies are looking at for sure.
Right. And whether it's purchasing, because I mean, also to be clear on the Fender piece, and this happens a lot with these other brands, whether they purchase the brand or have exclusive manufacturing and distribution, whatever it is, they're controlling that brand at some level,
Right.
So that's, it is an interesting conversation. And I just think educating everybody on what these things are happening, what it's all going to look at. Like, I actually like the idea that Reverb's now owned by people that actually are musicians versus like Etsy, which is just a big, I mean, I shouldn't say just a big, I mean, obviously a lot of people like Etsy. I bought stuff off of Etsy. It's super cool. Too. It just is a little, like, they both sell stuff online, but you don't get the vibe like, okay, this is musician driven. So I actually think we should see some pretty cool stuff coming out of this acquisition is my take on it. If you're a Reverb person, I think it's a better fit than what Etsy was.
Well, maybe they'll bring someone like me back who hasn't really purchased or I purchase stuff on Reverb, but I don't sell that much on Reverb. So maybe they'll make it more interesting and attractive for someone like me too. But
100%.
Yeah, man. Well, that seems like a good place as any to kind of wrap it up. It's always a spirited conversation. If you can't tell, when Steve and I get on the phone, this is how it goes. And then we say, we should talk about this in a podcast form. So here we are.
We just had our weekly phone conversation, but just recorded it.
I'll talk to you Monday. But yeah, in any case, thanks everybody for joining us here on this podcast. Again, this is Surviving Guitar. I'm Corey, and you heard Steve giving us all the lowdown on all things music instrument business from his perspective. And if you're interested in any of the guitar lessons that I do, you can try hundreds of them for free with a link below. That'll give you access for 14 days to my website called workingclassguitar.com. And if you become a VIP, you'll see Steve again. We host a monthly Zoom call for our member-only subscribers. It's a lot of fun. And we're always interested in topics, so drop them in the comments of what you'd like to hear us talk about. This is an area of discussion that you don't hear from me very often, and you're just hearing Steve and all his expertise as well. So we'd love to continue all of these conversations. So let us know what you're interested in the comments, and we'll try to point them into future episodes. Right, Steve?
That sounds like a plan to me.
Cool. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us on episode 1. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.